all of our daily lives. And if you can't participate in one of the events that's happening today, Jordan, year-round, there are plenty of cleanup efforts that you can go in, but it's all about planet versus plastics. So today, maybe pay attention to your plastic intake. Try to maybe use no plastic today, if possible, or at least single-use plastic.
Smart. Yep, go to the reusable.
Of the season. So one of the big reasons that you can are the warmer ocean temperatures. We've been talking about how we've had record warmth right now in April. It's more like late June, early July. That's how hot the ocean is, and that can get warmer to rise and things start to bubble up. And that was the case actually last year too. We had very warm water temperatures, but we had an El Nino. This year we have La Nina, and I'll explain why that matters coming up. But look at May. Our origins are here in the Gulf, right near the coast, down towards Bay of Campeche, you know, these areas. And by the way, you can have fronts into the Caribbean, fronts that come down and systems that spin up off of those boundaries and cause tropical storms to develop. And if you look back at April and May storms since 2015, there have been a few, and most of them do stay in that lower tropical depression, tropical storm, but you can get named systems. They don't typically get super strong during the months of April and May, but June you can certainly have hurricanes. And notice we see a lot more of storms developing and even far out into the Atlantic, which is not super typical. But again, it can certainly happen. Now, if they form close to coast here into the Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche, even in the Caribbean, it's like someone will feel the impacts of it. And so we could get that. If we look at last year, we actually had several June storms. This was Tropical Storm Arlene, didn't, you know, come ashore. But still, the fact that we had a couple named systems here, Brett, and there was another one too, it's not a good indicator because it was so warm last year in the oceans, and we're seeing that warmth yet again, which means we could have another early start. This is a list of our names, starting with Alberto off the top and then on into Beryl. And right now, everyone, including the weather company, is forecasting a season well above average because of those warm ocean temperatures and La Nina. Notice during La Nina, you have a lot more tropical storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes than you do during a neutral year or an El Nino. And one of the reasons why is you get these cooler than average ocean temperatures off of South America, and that creates weaker winds. And these storms, they develop in those weaker winds and warmer water temperatures. So we have both of these combining, which is why everyone is going well above average with the numbers. So Jim, right now is the time to plan, check up on your insurance, because if you change your insurance, there's a time period you have to wait until it kicks in.
Name a storm.
Boots, because I was so cold this morning. I looked at the temperatures and I was like, okay, that might be a little dramatic since it's going to be in the 60s this afternoon with sunshine. But I still wore the booties because it is cold out there. We got a dip in our jet stream getting down into the south. And notice all the frost and freeze advisories. I don't know if you can see right here. We're going to zoom in for next hour. But this is Philadelphia. There is literally no advisory here for frost, but there is frost advisories all around. That's what you call an urban heat island effect. And I thought that was important to point out, not only today, but especially on Earth Day, because all that warmth into Philly, you don't have that advisory, which I think is quite interesting. And speaking of Philly, that's a little bit of a hint, Jim and Jordan, who played in the first National League baseball game on this date in 1876?
Who played?
Yeah. What?
Red Sox?
Well done, Jim.
Oh,
I'm
seriously?
impressed. The Boston Red Caps at that time beat the Philadelphia Athletics 6-5. The game lasted a little more than 2 hours. They had favorable weather, 3,000 fans there in the Athletics ground. So I'm very impressed, Jim. Cheers to that. Philadelphia, you are at 42 degrees right now. Cooler temperatures outside of that region. And notice that the average last freeze date, I mean, listen, we can go into May with some more freezing temperatures, but this is about the time when I know a lot of gardeners are looking into what are they going to plant. Currently, our leaf out is well ahead of schedule here. Notice we're talking 20 days early throughout parts of the Midwest. And I'll tell you what, you don't even need a map to notice that. Your allergies alone will tell you that if they're already starting to kick off here. 5 to 10 degrees below average for us today. Caribou, our average high is, if we can roll that back for me, that'd be awesome. Caribou, we are typically, I think, like in the 50s. Yeah, 51. Atlanta, our average high, 75. Chicago, 61 is our average high, so we're a little bit warmer there. But speaking of warmth, we will see that warm up come as we head into our weekend. Jet stream goes to the north, and that means it's going to be staying hot for us into the weekend. So we are going to flip back to 10 degrees above normal. And notice Nashville, Jim, we go from 68 to 85 in just a matter of days here.
Big weekend, Vanderbilt.
Plastics is taking center stage. That's because a big part of tackling the climate crisis is also confronting the increase in plastic production, which is linked, believe it or not, to fossil fuels. It might surprise you. The Weather Channel's Katie Tutrone takes a look at where your plastics actually come from. Continues all day long here, and we want to show you what's a look ahead on the first live climate change talk show, which is Pattern. Beach cleanups will be happening around the world.
I'm going to say plastic bottle. Really?
Cigarette butts.
Mm-hmm.
That's
plastic
right.
bottles was a very good guess.
That's not fair.
Butts.
You two are pattern people.
Well, you got saying.
But where's plastic?
Cigarette butts was number one. And, you know, in beach cleanups, you see those a lot.
You
so.
do see those a lot.
Guy.
Yeah, exactly, with that pink hue, just fantastic. Let's get you out the door in the Northeast and take sick intake today, because the theme of this year's Earth Day is planet versus plastic. So no plastic cutlery, no plastic water bottles, you know, baggies that you use. Jordan, maybe just cut down on that for the day today, and then maybe you get into a new habit.
Sure, that's a great idea.
I Spy with my little eye one system that's going to be giving us some trouble here for the beginning of the week. Do you see where it is? I mean, we have this off the coast, maybe dragging down into Florida. But this is our weather maker, and it's not a super potent weather maker, but it's enough to bring us some clouds and just a few light showers as we go through the day, and maybe even a little turbulence, maybe a few bumps as you're going through that system as well. But overall, you are not going to have very strong turbulence here across the board because we don't have a big weather maker with different winds kind of blowing you around in that plane. And notice that we're basically on the light side when we're talking about turbulence when you're doing any traveling here from coast to coast overall. Yeah, you might get a little bump there into places like Kansas, but notice that things are basically on the light side as we go through the day. Here is that system I was just showing you tomorrow over the Great Lakes. Chicago, you might see some slight delays, but with this type of rain, usually planes can take off and come in with no problem. I always think of the baggage handlers when there's rain like this and everyone has to work outside at the airport or just work outside in general, because it's going to be cloudy and cold and gusty. Jordan, you know, that can be tough to work in sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I saw some of my meteorology ones.
You know, there's like half-price books you can sell them to, and then
history, and even earlier than that, April or May, and our current water temperatures. Look at our current water temperatures. They have been record-setting, and they are well above average. We are talking about water temperatures right now that are more typical of late June, early July. It's pretty incredible. And notice you can get storms in May from the Caribbean to the Gulf over to the Atlantic. A lot of times we watch boundaries like this, fronts come off, and you get little low pressures to spin up. And I know, Jim, last hour, it was funny, you didn't hear me, but you go, oh, we have a low pressure. And literally at the exact same time you said, I said, yeah, but I don't think it's tropical. My mic wasn't on. I was just kind of saying it to myself. We said it at the exact same time. It was actually pretty funny. Yeah.
Oh,
I was like,
cool.
I don't know if that thing will be tropical. But you can get them in April and May. So look at the storms. A lot of these really are in May, and they're not super strong. They're tropical depressions or tropical storms, but they can form. June, you see a little more formation here for us down into the Bay of Campeche. A few could form off in the Atlantic, and we're going to explain why we think this is going to be a super active season and perhaps start off so early. Notice our origin tracks. They typically do come into land when they're this close and develop this close to land. If we look back to last year, and remember, last year had record-setting warm temperatures in the Atlantic again. It was very, very hot, but we had El Nino. And El Nino are winds that blow. Stronger winds typically happen over the tropics. And so last year we had early storms. We had a lot of storms, but we had El Nino. And this is why we worry about this year, is that now we have the same conditions minus the winds. So, yes, we could see storms develop here early in the season, and things could really get cranking as we head towards the middle of the season. Notice our names. Alberto is our first one, going all the way through the list, ending at William. And don't forget, we have a supplemental list now that we will use. And basically, everyone is calling for an above-average season. I mean, this could be a big deal. You're talking double the amount of major hurricanes, which is pretty massive. And during a La Nina year, as I was mentioning, you actually just get overall more storms. You see that we're well above that. Hurricanes were above everyone, and majors were above everyone as well when you're talking neutral or El Nino. And the thing that causes the La Nina, Jim, are the cooling ocean waters, as you know, off of South America, giving us those weaker winds, and that's why we can get more storms to develop. Right now, Jim, everyone should just be planning and getting their insurance together, the supplies, your plan, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, there are
here in the lower 48. Jordan, I've never heard anyone refer to the Earth as a blueberry, but I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only heard marble, you know, but I'm going to have to go with blueberry. Speaking of blue, we got a lot of it on the map as we have a dip in the jet stream that allows the cold air to go south, giving us all sorts of advisories. Now, last hour, I pointed out Philadelphia. It might be a little hard to see. In Philadelphia, we do not have a frost advisory, but we do in a lot of the surrounding areas. So I want to zoom into this area and have a closer look at what's happening here. And notice Philadelphia and some of the, surrounding cities there. No frost advisory. Well, this is what you call urban heat island effect. And so because you're in a city, you have a lot more buildings, you have a lot more cars. It's a lot warmer in a city, so it doesn't get as cold. And we can show you Philadelphia's at 45. Well, now we're warming up. This, though, was at 33, I will say, at last check. So, Veronica, I think we're starting to warm up here, and that's so it's kind of messed up our numbers. But Pottstown was in the 30s this morning, and you can still see Wrightsville is a little bit cooler as you go out in time here for us. But that sun is coming up, and so that's going to even things out a little bit for us. But otherwise, we do have those cooler temperatures all the way down to Nashville, Memphis in the 40s. And you would think this is about when we start getting to our last freeze. But notice anywhere in purple, and even the deeper purple, you can get more freezes all the way to May, though I know people are starting to get into their gardens and think about what they are going to be, planting. And here's the thing. The trees are already blooming out. We are some 20 days ahead of average here from the Midwest on into the plains. Anywhere you see that deeper red, that is where we are above average when we're talking about our tree leaf out. And one of the reasons is it's been so warm. Obviously, we're feeling the chill today, 5 or 10 degrees below average, and our temperatures will be below average here across the board. Caribou, we should be at 51 degrees. Places like Atlanta, you're going to be below average. We do feel those below average temperatures here across the board. And we will see our warm up as we head towards really kind of the end of the week. We'll see temperatures rebound for us, and our highs will be into the 80s, which will be above average. Atlanta, you should be in the mid 70s. New York, we should be in the 60s, not into the 70s. So we'll bump up above average here. Today to Sunday, I mean, we are literally just flipping the numbers and going up some 20 degrees in a lot of locations. Nashville, Atlanta. I mean, at least this weekend will be sunny and warm because last weekend, or this past weekend in the South, Jim, across really a big chunk of the South, we had clouds and showers.
Yeah, I mean, we went from
freezing temperatures. Now, on this day, on Earth Day, plastics is taking center stage. That's because a big part of tackling the climate crisis is also confronting the increase in plastic production, which is actually linked to fossil fuels. The Weather Channel's Katie Tutrone takes a look at where your plastics actually come from. Plastic's definitely one of them.
See, I mean, look at me.
Most littered item around the world. Blossoms in the blue sky and then some of the green trees. Seeing all those colors together is really, really nice. Let's get you out the door in the Northeast where things ahead in the T-Mobile Coast to Coast forecast and give you a peek at the temperatures in your area as you plan your travel for the week ahead. And yes, we are starting off Earth Week with some cooler temperatures. We only have one little system coming through the Midwest and the tail end of our last system hanging into South Florida, giving us some storms. This is the one I was just mentioning coming into the States. It really shows off tomorrow from Chicago to the Eastern Lakes. Otherwise, pretty quiet here. That shifts east into our Wednesday. It's Thursday into Friday. That's when we see our next big system in the center of the country really start to take shape. This could have severe weather associated with it. And notice the warmth surging back here. Atlanta, Houston, 70, 80 degrees as we head into our Friday. Saturday, it stays unsettled. Though notice the East Coast, pretty good with the exception of the Great Lakes. Even into our Sunday, it's the center of the country that's going to see a lot of action in the coming days. Green is not just a motto for families and businesses that want to make a difference on Earth. Meteorologist Alex Wallace joins us with a look ahead to how first responders are joining to push for a more sustainable planet.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, right? We get the rising temperature.
Yeah, something we need to learn because 'tis the season
Yes, it
for
is.
wind shear and
yeah,
tornadoes.
absolutely.
Now, our oceans cover 70% of our planet's surface, and on this Earth Day, we want to dive into the health of our oceans through the lens of NASA's newest satellite.
Yeah, so that's called PACE, and it was launched in February. Here joining us this morning is Dr. Ivana Sentovic. She's an oceanographer working on the PACE program. So, Ivana, let's talk about what is PACE and its broad mission.
First, happy Earth Day to everyone there.
Same to you.
Space is
Of the ocean that you mentioned, what is ocean color exactly, and what does it tell us about the water's health?
definitely.
And we like your hair too. Those are cool
We
colors
do love
too.
your hair. Purple's my favorite color, by the way. Sea surface temperatures already at record levels, and it's
Yeah.
April. Can PACE help us understand the heat potential influence here on this coming hurricane season? Also, how deep that hot water pool is?
So PACE is really not looking.
Centenish, we have about 30 seconds left here. I want to talk about the climate. As you just mentioned, our warming atmosphere has led to extreme events. We're talking droughts, flood, heat waves. Can PACE actually help us with these long-term climate trends?
Yes, it can.
Sir, Ivana Sentovic, oceanographer here. Thanks for talking to us this morning. Happy Earth Day back to you, and come back and join us. Just great information today.
It is. All right, let's
Thank
have
you.
a look at our dog walking forecast with Jordan.
Well, we know
Hurricane history, and look at our current water temperatures, which have been record-setting. Current water temperatures right now are what they should be late June, early July. That is not good news. That means we could see a lot of development, and one of the reasons that our forecasts are so high for this hurricane season. You can get storms in May. Notice they're down in the Caribbean, the Gulf, right off of the Atlantic here. You have to watch for boundaries that come down and then turn into tropical entities, and then it can just kind of slide up the coast. And if you notice, April and May, since 2015, there have been storms in April, but notice a lot of them in May here have been tropical storms or tropical depressions. They don't typically gain loads and loads of strength, but as we get into June, that's when they can start pumping up, and of course they get stronger as the season goes on, and you see more numerous storms start to develop as we head into this first month of hurricane season. And within these areas of development, unfortunately, you get a lot of, effects from these because they develop close to home. It's not like they're developing way out to sea and they can do that turn. They're closer to home. And so a lot of times we do feel those early storm impacts. If we look last year where we had very warm ocean temperatures again, but we had El Nino, we did have 3 storms develop in June. And so this is why a lot of people are worried, because we have very warm water temperatures like we did last year, but we don't have the strong winds associated with El Nino. And that's really one of the big issues. But these were all systems that impacted us. Our first storm name will be Alberto. And then we go through the list. And don't forget, we don't use the Greek alphabet anymore. We have a supplemental list now that we will be using. But look at the numbers. This is our average right here. And then we are going well above average in all categories for our hurricanes. And that's the Weather Company and Colorado State University. So we are expecting a very active season. During La Nina, notice you have more total storms than you do during a neutral or El Nino year. The same with La Nina, you have more hurricanes and more major hurricanes than you do with neutral or El Nino. Notice, by the way, El Nino is on the other end of the spectrum from La Nina, and we have the warm temperatures in place. And now, with La Nina developing, this is what we will not have that we had last year. This is what we will have that we didn't have last year. Weak upper level winds, and hurricanes like weak winds to develop so they can stand nice and tall and upright. During El Nino, the winds kind of knock these storms over, and they do not like it. So right now is the time really to plan, check up on your insurance, because there is a time period. If you get something now, you have to wait 30, 60, maybe 90 days, depending on what it is, if you're changing your insurance. And have a plan, Jim. I think that's really kind of key, because once you have it organized, you can just follow the plan.
Yeah, as still